Welcome back, and thank you for joining me in these little educational sessions. I hope that you are enjoying them and getting a lot of helpful information. So we're going to talk about the fall wellness topic, and this gives us a lot of opportunities to talk about essential oils, and as you know, I like to talk about the inner dimensions of botanical medicine. And that includes our biological unity with plants and how plant medicine works in many different ways. So I am going to devote this session to talking about the antimicrobial powers of essential oils. And this is a big subject, and it's very important. Now, in general, we can say that essential oils and aromatherapy work in basically two or three major ways, depending on what organ system we are applying them to. But the most simplistic way to really understand what essential oils are and how we can use them is to think of the routes of administration into the body. And so with aromatherapy, we are talking about the therapeutic benefits of aromas, and that links it to the olfactory system, and through the olfactory system to the limbic system. So this is one of the basic routes of administering essential oils through fragrance into the brain, and that's where we get a lot of the mood uplifting, anti-anxiety, relaxing, sleep enhancing kinds of effects. The other major route is going to be through the respiratory system. And when we're talking about using essential oils through the respiratory system for respiratory benefits, then that takes us into the topic of antimicrobial powers. And that links it directly to a category of oils that we could call the respiratory oils. And I've mentioned this category of oils several times in this series, and those are oils such as eucalyptus and spruce and pine and fir and juniper, like the Himalayan juniper that I talked about in the last couple sessions. So the conifer oils and the eucalyptus oils have a unique, intimate relationship with our respiratory system. Now, when it comes to the effects of aromatherapy on the limbic system for relaxation, it is very much a question of how do we like the oils, because the effect in the limbic system and on the nervous system and the relaxation effect is very much based on if we are enjoying the oils. It's a pleasure reaction that we are getting. But when we're talking about essential oils for the respiratory system, this is not so important. And this is a question that frequently comes: should I use an essential oil, or should I use an herb even if I don't like it? Well, when it comes to clearing the respiratory system, even if you're not a big fan of the conifer oils and the eucalyptus oils, they will be very helpful for clearing the respiratory system. So it is not so dependent on whether we like them or not, because the vapors, steam, the essential oil molecules are actually coming in contact with the respiratory mucous membrane, and they will do something whether we like it or not. Inducing a relaxation response is a bit more subjective and based on whether we find it pleasurable or not. But if we use these conifer oils and the eucalyptus oils, the oils that are in the category of the respiratory oils, we can apply them in several different ways, and we're going to get some benefits, whether we find the fragrance particularly pleasing or not. So the main ways that we use these oils, again, just to review very quickly, we can just put a couple drops of these oils on the palms and breathe them, direct palm inhalation. The advantage of doing this is that we can take the oil with us anywhere. These oils, the conifers and the eucalyptus oils, are very low risk in terms of dermotoxic potential. Just don't get it on your face and put it all around the eyes and things. So a couple drops on the palms and breathe it. Or we can just breathe it directly out of the bottle, although it's not going to give us such a big dose. And another major way is to put a couple drops on a pot of hot water, cover the head with a towel, and breathe the steam. And keep your eyes closed because the essential oils can irritate the eyes. 2 or 3 drops on a pot of hot water is fine. Now, if you do this once or twice a day, it will have a nicely decongesting effect and an expectorant effect in the respiratory system as well. But here's where I would like to talk about a deeper subject, and that is the antimicrobial powers of these oils. So whether we are doing it in a steam or direct palm inhalation or putting a couple drops on a compress or using it in a bath, what we're actually doing is we're using the immune system of the plant. All right, and this is where things start to move us in to a deeper conversation about our biological unity with plants and why is the human body formed the way that it is and why does human physiology do what it does. So a really simple way to start this topic is just to take this bottle of Himalayan Juniper from last week and say, well, what is in the bottle? And one of the contemplative exercises that I have encouraged everyone to do is to perceive the fragrance in a meditative kind of way, and you will be able to notice the ecophysiology of the plant. You'll be able to perceive the sunlight and the soil and the water and so forth. And this is a very nice meditative system that studies essential oils using the 5 elements, which I've presented many times and will continue to present because it's really an important way of meditating on plant medicine. But there's another way that we could look at what's in the bottle, and that is if we look at it from the standpoint of antimicrobial power, we can ask the question, well, why is this essential oil antimicrobial? Or how is it antimicrobial, and what does that mean for us? So here's a very simple definition of herbal medicine in general, and specifically for our topic here today. And that is herbal medicine is using the compounds that the plants produced for themselves for parallel human purposes. All right, so I'll say that again because it's a very important way to understand what we are doing when we consume herbs for any kind of benefit, whether it's adaptogens for strengthening or whether it's bitters for stimulating digestion or whatever. Using the essential oils for antimicrobial powers for the respiratory system. It's all the same. Herbal medicine is using the compounds that plants produce for themselves for parallel human purposes. All right, so there's a lot in there. And now we can say, well, all right, if the plants are producing these compounds for themselves, what does that mean? And then even more importantly and intriguingly is what are all of these parallel purposes and why? So an essential oil can be defined very simply as the distilled molecular immune system of a plant. The reason that we can say this, and the reason that we can say that all essential oils have some antimicrobial powers, even though not all essential oils have been researched for that purpose, but we can say it. And the reason that we can say it is because aromatic plants produce essential oils as part of their immune system. So with the conifer oils or the eucalyptus oils, it's very clear these trees produce these essential oils to keep pathogens away. And that's at the microbial level, which includes bacteria, viruses, and fungi. But it's not just at the microbial level, it's also for keeping animals from eating them. So one of the reasons that the conifer trees produce conifer oils is so that the deer won't eat them and the beetles won't eat them. And even more interestingly is that the compounds are not just to keep away microbial pathogens and animals, they're also to keep away other plants. Okay, so what we see then is that essential oils can be classified into 2 major biological functions. One is repelling, okay, keeping things away, and that means killing them also, or giving them indigestion. So the repelling function of essential oils is universal. Every essential oil has some power against microbes and some repellent properties, protective properties. But there's a second category that some essential oils have, which is also attractant. So how is it that an essential oil can be both protective and attractant? Well, the main example of the attractant oils are the flowers. And flowers produce these aromatic molecules to attract the pollinators. And therefore, the pollinators undoubtedly get a pleasant experience when they perceive this fragrance. Otherwise, they wouldn't be attracted. We are attracted to pleasure all the way down to the microbial level. And so therefore, when the aromatic molecules are created by the flowers on a biorhythmic basis at a very specific time of day, the flowers are pulsating aroma, you see, and they're opening and closing, and they are also, if we could see the emission of the aromatic molecules, it would actually look like pulsation of a sphere of fragrance coming from the flower. And some flowers have a huge, huge sphere of diffusivity, up to 50 feet per flower. So there's this sphere of fragrance that's being created by the flower as it goes out, and that's signaling to the pollinators, hello, nectar is available, come here, all right? Now that's from the flower oils, and that's also how we get a lot of the wonderful pleasurable sensations from the flower oils, is because the flower oils produce those oils to produce pleasure, to attract the pollinators. So that's part of the mechanism biologically. And the flowers also have immune protective functions in those oils. So we can take something like rose oil, which I've talked about, and we know that this is a beautiful oil for a lot of purposes: mood enhancing, anti-anxiety, antidepressant, and so forth, and very, very nice anti-inflammatory oil. But rose oil, even though it is such a beautiful, calming, attractant, nice perfume ingredient, it is also strongly antimicrobial. You see, so the flower oils also contain the antimicrobial powers, the protectant powers. So the broader category then is the protective function. And that's why aromatic plants produce essential oils. Number one, to protect themselves. But number two, some of them are also for attracting. All right. Now, let's look at this mechanism again, this overall statement that herbal medicine is using compounds that plants produce for themselves for parallel human purposes. So we know that this category of essential oils, the respiratory oils, eucalyptus and spruce, pine, fir, juniper specifically, but lots and lots of other oils as well, have these kind of benefits for the respiratory system, which is not just antimicrobial, but also expectorant and decongestant and antitussive, stops cough, and so forth. And so what we can say then is that the trees produce the oils to protect themselves from the microbes that are out there. And we could say, well, how effective is this immune system of trees? How effective are essential oils for protecting the tree? Well, to answer that question, we can say, well, how old are the trees? And how long have they been producing these essential oils? And what do the essential oils actually contain that give them these antimicrobial powers? Well, if you look at an essential oil, we can look at the historical side of things first, like conifer oils. How long have they been producing essential oils? Well, as long as they've been around, and some conifers have been around for over 100 million years. So that tells us that that immune strategy that the trees have, the conifer immune system, is highly effective because they're still here 100 million years later. And that's a real question about whether Homo sapiens are going to last for 100 million years with our immune system. So what we can say then is that this strategy of producing essential oils to protect themselves is highly, highly successful over a long period of time. Now we can say, well, how? How does it do? And what is it that's in the oil actually that makes this production of an essential oil so highly effective as an immune system, as a molecular immune system. And the secret is diversity, molecular diversity. So if you look at an oil, say, such as tea tree oil, well, there is a primary compound that is highly regarded as being the most antimicrobial, which is terpenol. And it's a terpene that's in there, and it's measured, it's standardized, and all of this. And it's widely believed that this is the most important of the antimicrobial compounds in tea tree oil. But if you look at a chromatograph of tea tree oil, what you see is that even in a relatively simple chromatograph, there's over 150 compounds in it. Now, every one of those compounds has an immunological purpose, you see. And so what that means is that a plant has created a barrier, an aromatic molecular barrier to protect itself using hundreds of compounds that are going to attack pathogens, you see. Now, this is totally different than the concept of creating an antimicrobial drug. So it takes 10 to 20 years for hundreds and hundreds of scientists to create a new antibiotic. And it only takes, it only takes about 2 weeks of continual exposure before the microbe starts to learn how to adapt itself. And that doesn't mean that it wears off right away. The effectiveness of the drug wears off right away because it has to get out into the population for an extended period of time. But that's why they call them generations of antimicrobials, because the effectiveness typically lasts about 20 years or so before it really starts to decrease. Now, this is a real problem medically, and we know that antibiotic resistance is everywhere, and antiviral resistance is everywhere, and this is what's driving a lot of the research into essential oils and plant medicine. The labs at the pharmaceutical companies and researchers are looking for alternatives. And the question then comes, well, what if they just take this terpenol out of tea tree and just use that as a drug? Or what if we just take the berberine out of golden seal and just use that as a drug? Can the microbes become resistant to that? And the answer is that if you take an isolated compound, that the microbes have a higher likelihood of learning how to adapt to that than if they're confronted with hundreds of compounds attacking them all at the same time. You see, so what this points to then is, in terms of intelligence, if we stack this up, what we see is that we have microbial intelligence, we have plant intelligence, and we have human intelligence. But if we look at it in terms of the effectiveness of what does what, conifer trees have been protecting themselves effectively for 100 million years, all right? Well, they have done this through having hundreds and hundreds of compounds in their essential oils. And it takes 20 years of hundreds of brains, scientific brains, to create a new drug, and the microbes learn how to adapt to it in a very short period of time. And so therefore what we can say is that in terms of intelligence level, that plant intelligence is higher than botanical, that botanical plant intelligence is higher at an immunological level than microbial intelligence, because it's still working and the microbes have not been able to adapt, and that microbes are actually smarter than scientists, you see. So if we look at it that way, then it puts into perspective the necessity, the relevance, the importance of plant-based antibiotic compounds. Now, that doesn't mean that they work in the same way, that we can have the same expectations, but what it does mean is that we need to really consider this whole model of the magic bullet attacking the microbe, which is prevalent in many aspects of science. It's not just that the drugs are based on that concept. It's also with pesticides, herbicides. Everything is based on, kill off nature. And nature is smarter, and it's adapting, and it's giving us super weeds, and it's giving us super bugs and all of that in response to trying to subdue it. So this is a little bit of a philosophical overview about the importance of the antimicrobial powers of essential oils. And so let's go back to this question then about the parallel uses. Why is it that we can use compounds that plants produce for themselves for parallel human purposes? Why is it that a plant can make an essential oil and it is helpful for us? Well, here's the basis of this, and that is that the human body is actually made in the mirror image of plants. And I know that in a lot of parts of the world that's sort of heretical to say that, but it's biologically correct. And the reason for that is because in order for human life to emerge in this biosphere, the plants spent hundreds of millions of years creating habitable conditions, you see. And so humans came from plants. And this is correct to say biologically in terms of planetary history. Humans came from the conditions. Humans evolved out of the biospheric ecological conditions that plants created. And it took the plants a very long time to create it. And now we're undoing it very, very rapidly, you see. So if we look at the role of plants in the biosphere, what we see is that they are regulating the seasons, they are replenishing the oxygen, they're rejuvenating the soil, they're, helping the rain to go into the earth and all of these things. And so the plants are actually controlling the biosphere at a medical level. They are balancing the elements of the biosphere, all right? They are balancing earth, water, fire, air, space, and that's what they've been doing for hundreds of millions of years, and it took them a long time to create this habitable world for us. And then out of that, higher life was able to emerge. Now, our body reflects that. The way that our body is structured anatomically is designed to be in an intimate biological relationship with plants. And the reason for that is very simple. We cannot live on sunlight, and we cannot live on dirt, okay? If we could, life would be a lot easier. It would be a lot simpler in many ways to just live on sunlight and air and dirt, and we can't do that. So we have to eat the plants, and when we eat the plants, we are eating the nutrients from the soil that they concentrate for us, but we are also combusting those nutrients through metabolism, which is the body warmth, by using sunlight. So in other words, we are solar-powered beings who are living on dirt that has been formed into all these delicious foods by the plants. That's how we can look at it. And because of that, we see that there are all these biological parallels anatomically and physiologically with plants. So metabolic warmth, 98.6 degrees, for example, that's combusting sunlight in a physiological mirror image of photosynthesis, all right? But eating the food, it goes into the GI tract, and that's basically just like a tube, which is like a worm, okay? And then breathing, we are in a gaseous exchange with the plants around us, and they are primarily exhaling oxygen. We are primarily inhaling oxygen. We are exhaling carbon dioxide. They are primarily inhaling carbon dioxide. And there's a reason for that. That's a miraculous thing if you think about it, that we're breathing together with plants. But there's a reason for that, and that's because our metabolic warmth is the opposite of photosynthesis in plants, you see. So that's where we get this idea that herbal medicine is using the compounds that the plants produce for themselves for parallel human purposes. So here's an interesting aspect of this, which is that if we look at the essential oils, what are they repelling? What are the antimicrobial powers of these essential oils? And it turns out that a lot of the enemies that we have are the same enemies that the plants have. And so in that sense, we have a biological relationship with plants where the plants are fundamentally protective of us. Okay, plants aren't out to kill us. Okay, they're out to feed us, and they are out to protect us by sharing their immune system with us. Not voluntarily, of course, but we're taking it, and we are using it in ways that are beneficial for ourselves. So this is how we can apply that particular concept that herbal medicine is taking things from plants. They produced it for themselves, and they're going to produce it whether we're here or not. But they produced it for themselves, but we can use it for the same kinds of purposes. So here's one final topic, and then I'll mention a few things happening over at Floracopeia, and you can submit your questions if you would like. And this has to do with the historical reference and understanding of the role of aromatic plants for immune protection and antimicrobial powers. So aromatic plants have been used throughout human history. I am sure that they were one of the first categories of plants that our early ancestors got to know very intimately. And the science showing archaeological research about aromatic plants in old Neolithic homes and things like that. It goes back a long way. So we've been using aromatic plants a long time. And one of the things that we do know about aromatic plants is that they have always been used for infections and contagion and epidemics. And this is a very interesting topic because if we look at classical Chinese medicine and we look at classical Ayurvedic medicine, you know, these systems of medicine that go back thousands of years, they have early writings over 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old, where they are making reference to epidemics and contagion. Now, how is that? Because they didn't have microscopes, they didn't know about microbes, but they had a microbial theory or theories. And the reason that they were able to have microbial theories was because they knew that epidemics were happening. You see, so if half of the village gets the same symptoms and half the village dies from the same condition, then they know something's going on. But a lot of the classical references to contagion are incredibly accurate. In Ayurveda, for example, there are specific protocols for epidemics. Don't shake hands. Don't touch other people. Social distancing protocols. Okay, don't be around people who are sneezing and coughing. And this was written like 2,000 years ago. You see, so there was an understanding about microbes, even though they couldn't see it. They could see the effects of the microbes in society. They could see the epidemic taking place. But there is a very interesting relationship to aromatherapy here, and that is we cannot see microbes with the naked eye. We need a microscope, but we can smell them, right? And this is the link to how did these old doctors and how did people in the past know about epidemics being transmitted, that there was a basis of transmission. And that basis was through bad smells. And aromatherapy is the antidote to bad smells. So bad smells have always been linked to bad health and epidemics. So in the old classical Asian terminology, in Chinese medicine, they would say it's evil qi, right? Bad smells that are being transmitted through the air. And that's why respiratory conditions are still described as attack of wind cold, or attack of wind heat. They know that there is something that is airborne, okay? In Ayurvedic medicine, there's a term, krimi, which means parasites, but it also means things that are transmitted microbially. So the link with the sense of smell then is because when people are sick and when there is garbage rotting and there's putrefaction happening, then there's bad smells. And those bad smells are coming from the bacteria that are pathogenic. So the term that was used in Western medicine for a very long time, up until maybe early 1900s or so, was miasm. Okay, and a miasma. Okay, so a miasma was described as being a cloud of bad air. Now, the cloud of bad air was thought to be the cause of the illness. And now, of course, it's described as, well, that's quaint, it's antiquated, it's obsolete. But there's actually still a lot to it. And a simple example of the miasma theory is the disease called malaria. Malaria, bad air. Well, they didn't know that the mosquito was the vector that carried this particular parasite that got into the bloodstream. What they knew was that that the disease was associated with bad air. So the idea then, at a practical level, was use the aromatic plants to antidote the bad air. Well, the aromatic plants are full of essential oils. As a matter of fact, the aromatic plants, any aromatic plant that is used in any system of herbology, the reason it's aromatic is because it contains essential oils. And in most cases, the essential oils will be the primary family of compounds that are active medically. So we then see that fumigation, whether it was with frankincense or whether it was with camphor or any type of burning of incense therapeutically, like last week I told you about the Himalayan juniper. The main use of the Himalayan juniper is actually for fumigation, using the branches on a coal in ceremony or just in the home. And that is releasing the essential oils into the air. Now, there is a lot of evidence that essential oils in fumigation are highly effective for actually clearing the air of microbial pathogens and therefore reducing contagion. So this is the number one takeaway point from this little talk, is that if you put essential oils into a diffuser, you are going to kill the pathogens in the air. It's documented. And I gave you an example several weeks ago of a study that was done. They wanted to know about what actually happens when you burn the, frankincense. What does the smoke do? And they found that it kills like up to 90% of the airborne pathogens. Imagine that. People knew what they were doing. So we can say the same thing with virtually any essential oil, but the conifer oils and the eucalyptus oils also have the benefit of having a long history of being used specifically for the respiratory system. So that's a little bit about fragrance. All right? And the aromatic plants have been used in all kinds of ways before the days of distillation. Burning the frankincense. Another way, they used to just cut fresh lavender and put it on the floor, and strewing herbs. People would, walk on it and it would smell lovely. And anything that is counteracting the bad smells is counteracting the microbial pathogens in the environment. So that's a nice way to think about it. Okay, so with that, I think I'm going to turn my attention here to a couple of things to mention. Okay, so looks like some questions have come in, and thank you for that. Over at Floracopeia, we have a fall wellness sale that's happening to boost immunity and protect your health. And there's a code there. I'll give it to you now. Fall Wellness 20. Fall Wellness 20. All right. So if I have inspired you to put some essential oils in a diffuser to purify the air, well, you can use that. And then the links are in our bio. I'm being reminded here. And then also, for those of you who might want to talk to me about this medically, crowconsultations.com is my consultation site, crowconsultations.com. All right, so that's a little overview about the microbial aspect of essential oils. This is a huge subject. I'm going to be talking about this for a few more weeks, actually, and then we'll transition to some other things. But I also want to mention that we have a new oil coming that has not been on the market ever. And it is currently in a small airport in a faraway land. And it's going to be arriving in the next week or so, and it is going to be a world's first. Okay, so a question came in here. Okay, scabies and mites. All right, well, this is complicated, all right? And what I can say is that scabies and mites can be very difficult, but they can be eradicated. So the main thing with scabies and mites is it's not a simple equation of like, okay, these essential oils will kill them. The essential oils in fairly dilute amounts will kill them. There's no question about that. It's how effectively can you get them out of the environment? That's the main thing. Is it's really a question of hygiene, and it means that you've got to do a lot of deep cleaning over and over again. And you know, I have worked with a lot of people over the years who have had scabies, mites, and other parasitic infestations of the skin, and it's really a source of suffering. And it's complicated because kids bring them home from school, and it's very much based on social contact. It's very much based on hygiene of the home and so forth. So what I can say is that this is actually a specialized kind of medical question, because there are products that have varying degrees of effectiveness that various people have tried. Now, what I typically recommend is that you don't try to treat anything medically until you absolutely know that you are keeping them under control in the home. Then treat it medically on the body itself as part of that. But I approach it in two ways. And this is a basic principle of healing that's very important to realize, and that is we can't always just attack, okay? Even with herbal medicine, we can't just always attack. And typically people will contact me after they've been attacking these things for months and months and months and months, and now it's wearing off, the effectiveness is wearing off, and they're getting problems from attacking it. It's starting to irritate the skin. So what I typically do is I recommend some of the things that are known, and there's a variety of essential oils that are known. Tea tree is probably number one, and then of course as a carrier there's neem oil, which is a fatty oil, which is nice to put the essential oils in, but we have to have the right balance so that the essential oils are strong enough to kill the mites without irritating the skin. And that's the real issue with these antimicrobial oils that we have to keep in mind, and I'll talk about this next week. Because so many people, they just assume that since there's some studies that say it kills these microbes, that means that we can drink them and it's going to kill the microbes. No, it doesn't work that way. So what I typically do is work with the person, advising them in how to eradicate them from the home, stop the chain of transmission, all this kind of thing. And then find the right balance between the medication and protecting the skin, and then also adding nutritive, nervous system calming, anti-inflammatory herbal program inside as well. Because a lot of times what happens is that when people get these infections, infestations actually, it triggers the nervous system in such a way that even after the pathogen is gone, that the nervous system is still highly reactive. And this is something to keep in mind, is that you see this with all kinds of microbial infections, parasitic infections, where the effect of the microbe continues even after the microbe is gone. And that's where it gets complicated, because people keep attacking it and it's not even there. And so you need to calm the nervous system down and bring the inflammation down instead. So, all right. Okay, we have a couple other things. Are we going to save this live? Yes, all these live talks are posted on our Instagram feed and also over at our YouTube channel, so thank you. And any essential oils for hypopigmentation caused by fungus. This is not so much an essential oil problem, okay? First of all, we want to treat the fungus. Essential oils can play a role in that, but fungal treatment on the skin is very, or the nails is, it's very complicated, and it's kind of a long-term learning how to peacefully coexist in a certain kind of way. There are cases where it can be eradicated naturally. There are cases where it's better to actually use over-the-counter things first and then support the health of the skin and the nails with natural products afterwards. That's what I tend to recommend, is see what you can do with the over-the-counter stuff first and then see what you can do with natural medicine. Natural medical treatments for fungus, they can go on for a long, long time without results. But if you can knock it down, get it under control or eradicate it first, then the natural things can help prevent it from coming back. It's an immunological problem, really. You know, everybody's exposed to it. And so why do some people get it? Or why does the rate of fungal infection go up as we get older? And virtually everybody in their 80s has some fungal infection, you see. So this is a big topic. Maybe devote a whole hour to it at some point. It's a very good question. So yes, what I can say is that particular question of hypopigmentation, the simple answer is no, essential oils are not really a treatment for that. Essential oils can be part of an integrated treatment for fungal infections, yes, but you also have to look at internal herbs, immune boosting herbs, and possible role of over-the-counter medications. Now, I do not recommend that people take the prescription drugs for the antifungals unless it's really critical, because they're very, very toxic. Okay, so let's see. Do you still have CBD and hemp oil on the site? Actually, we have never had CBD and hemp oil. It might be something that will be there in the future, since many people are asking. But for now, I'll just say that we have this unique, artisanal, rare, never before distilled oil that's coming from a faraway place. And that's what we can offer you now. And at some point, perhaps we will move into CBD products. All right, so with that, I just want to mention, again, check out what we've got going on over at Floracopeia. I'll give you that discount again. It's Fall Wellness 20. And so thank you for attending. Have a wonderful week. I hope that you find this information helpful and that you can apply it. And if nothing else, even if you don't end up using the respiratory oils, when you are around plants, just be aware that we are always breathing with them, and they are producing these compounds that we are using as medicine for ourselves. All right, have a wonderful week, and see you next time.